Hi, and welcome to another edition of What's New in Jenkins LTS. If you've never been here before, my name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. And much like usual, we have Mark Waite with us. Mark, how are you doing?
Doing great, Darren. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good. This is a big LTS.
It is. This is a big one. I like this one. I've been really pleased with it. A lot of testing, a lot of exploring, and a lot of things that I think are really valuable.
Okay. So in case people don't know who you are, why don't you explain who you are real quick?
Sure. So I'm the Jenkins Documentation Officer. I'm a member of the Jenkins Governing Board, and I'm a Jenkins contributor. I also maintain the Jenkins Git plugin, the Git client plugin, and a few others. I'm very interested in Jenkins and like working with it.
It seems like you might like Jenkins.
I do.
It just feels like it. I don't know why. Okay. So this is 2.332.1. I've been having a problem putting 322. I was like, no, it's not 322. Right. It's 332.1.
Yeah, the combinations of 3s and 2s in there are really hard. It's 2.332.1. Yes, exactly.
Wait till the next one and the one after that. Then it's nothing but 2s and 3s. Right. At least we had a 1 in this one. Good grief. Okay. So in case people don't know, Jenkins does a release every week. And not surprisingly, that's called Jenkins Weekly.
Weekly, yes.
Hey, we're not marketing experts, but we can make math from a calendar happen. But Jenkins LTS, why don't you walk us through what the process for LTS is?
Sure. So Jenkins LTS, the LTS stands for long-term support. And the Jenkins long-term support release is a release that is selected every approximately 12 weeks. So every 3 months, we choose a base release. That base release then becomes the target for selected backports, where we identify any crucial changes that have been arrived in weekly releases since that base release and backport them. And then we use that as a basis for a series of releases once every month. Dot 1 starts at the beginning of the period. 4 weeks later, we do dot 2. 4 weeks later, we do dot 3. And sometimes we may do more than that if we get surprised or if we have to do some surprise security release, etc.
And that's it. It's really simple. Very simple, very easy. Do you remember the chef who said that?
I do not.
Chef Tell. Come on. You don't remember. That's okay. All right, let's just get into the notes because I could talk about other things all day. And that's not why we're here today.
Right.
So here's what's new. Now, how do you want to tackle this one? Because the dot 1 is always a bit different in how we talk about it because it's the dot 1.
It is. And so there are two topics in the dot 1, right? The first is backports. And that's the section we see on screen right now. And I think we should talk backports first because backports are things that were important enough that the Jenkins community team, all the folks working on it, felt like this is worth bringing back as a fix on 2.332's baseline. These were problems that were discovered in later versions, and we brought them back just to be sure that they were available for the 2.332.1 user.
Okay. Now, this top one seems to be, in my opinion, probably the biggest one.
Well, and it depends on your perspective, right? It was certainly one that was very, very important to me. It's rare that we will bring back an enhancement request. The color of the dot on the left-hand side there is giving a hint that this is not a bug report. Bug reports come in red. Right, it's an enhancement. Right. And the switch from Linux installers from using System 5 init to using System D is a significant change. I just looked at the history. Kosuke committed early implementations of the Linux packaging in 2008. So we are talking almost 14 years of code that's been doing installation and configuration on Linux systems this way. So this is a significant change because there are probably lots of people who are using it and using it in this way. So System D is a newer way of doing things. Now, newer means it was introduced in 2015, so it's not that new. But it's a newer way of doing things than System 5 init.
Okay. Now, we'll dig into that a little bit later in more detail. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
I'm saying since it's at the top, we want to spend a little bit more time on it. But I really think, Mark, that we're probably going to be doing another live stream just walking people through how to do that upgrade from prior to 3.3 to 1. I think we just have to do that. Because
And I think that would be a fun one, because there are all sorts of subtleties hiding in that all sorts of things that people did with their system configurations on their Linux machine that they may now have a question. Oh, what about this? And what about that? So I think it's a good topic.
I've done 2 upgrades so far since it came out yesterday. One went fine.
Good.
The other one was a little more painful. And that was the first one that I did. I was able to get out of it, right? I was able to dig back out of it, but it took a little bit longer than I was expecting. So, yeah, I've got the battle scars already. So,
right, and it's important that there is a lot of code that had to be done here. This transition did some very important things, and Basil Crow's work implementing it is actually quite impressive. The story behind the automated testing he created, and the upgrade scripts he created, and the migration from System 5 init to System D, from platform-specific configuration to a System D-based platform independent. So a lot of good topics there.
And in fact, we might have, depending on how long it actually takes, we'll probably even do it for 2 operating systems. Now, if you're already running Docker, this doesn't affect you at all. This is only if you're running the packaged version on Linux.
That's correct.
Right, that's all that matters here.
It affects people who are running the Deb package. It affects people who are running the Red Hat RPM and people who are running the SUSE RPM. Right.
Oh, that's the one I haven't tested yet, was the SUSE one yet. But I think probably RPM and Debs are
those
95%.
Exactly.
Okay.
The Red Hat RPMs and the Debian/Ubuntu Debs will cover the vast majority. That covers things like Amazon Linux 2, Alibaba Linux. It covers all sorts of other package operating systems, not just CentOS and Red Hat.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's move on from here. Where do you want to go next here? Which one do you want to talk about?
Well, so if you'd like to talk about something other than System D, we could talk about component upgrades. So component upgrades.
Now, hang on just a second. We will come back to System D as we go through this.
Okay, good.
I do, because I do want to spend at least a little bit of time today on it, but let's go ahead and move on to the other things, and we'll come back to that maybe towards the end.
All right. Well, good. So another piece for me was component upgrades. Now, component upgrades are down in the changes since 2.319.3. So in that section, you'll see here, upgrade the Guava library. Always enable the agent to controller security subsystem. Those 2 things are stories that need some conversation, and I think it's worth us having a conversation about what they mean and why.
Okay.
So on the first one, the agent to controller security subsystem, we've for the longest time allowed Jenkins agents to make calls back to the Jenkins controller and to perform operations on the controller when they needed to. We found that that's really difficult to get it right from a security perspective. And we put in place many, many years ago a system that would say, just be very careful with agent to controller security. However, with this release, you don't even have the option any longer to disable the agent to controller security. It's blocked. You simply cannot make those kind of calls back. We used to allow it. We used to put, okay, here's this escape hatch. It's just too problematic. And so no more escape hatch. You can't make those kind of calls from the agent back to the controller.
I also want to call out one thing here, because both of these have something a little in common. Use the plugin manager to upgrade the incompatible plugins.
Right.
And then also plugin manager talking about upgrading all the plugins before and after. Do you want to go over to the upgrade notes real quick before we get into the Guava side?
Let's do. The upgrade notes are a good place to talk actually about the Guava side. So let's do that.
So with the upgrade notes, and by the way, if you don't know how to get to the upgrade notes, when you go to the changelog, and in fact, if you don't know how to even get here, if you just go to jenkins.io and then click on download, it will take you to this page.
Right.
And then at the very top, before you get into the what's new, there's an LTS upgrade guide, and that's where we're at right here.
Yeah, so let's go to Guava Upgraded,
Go to
because
Guava first,
it's
yeah.
a good place for us to talk about what's going on with these component upgrades. So the Guava Upgrade is a great story that Jenkins was using Guava for some specific capabilities it provided and had been using it since very early. You see here it mentions January of 2012 was the base version. Well, the Google team that manages the Guava library has gone through many, many releases since then. A number of those releases were API incompatible, and their API compatibility is theirs to choose, but it was different than the Jenkins API compatibility. So we had to do some significant changes in order to assure that we could adopt their current Guava library. And thanks to Basil Crow and to others in the Jenkins community, we succeeded in doing that. The Guava library has been upgraded to a current release of Guava.
So this isn't as extreme as the as the X-stream unfork, because this was never a fork of Guava.
Right.
It was just super old.
Right. Well, it was. I guess you might describe it as a fork in the sense that it was a fork because it was a point in time at which we were frozen because any upgrade risked breaking compatibility. And what Basil had to do was he had to identify the usages, take them out, replace them, or find compatible ways to deal with them. So it was an investigation looking at multiple plugins, looking at multiple components in core to be sure that they were safe to use the new version of Guava. And there's a whole blog post linked there that gives more details on what that story is.
Okay. Let's go and go through the other two that are here, and maybe we will talk about the systemd changes while we're here.
Okay.
So JRuby was removed.
Right. So this is another legacy story as to how Jenkins core is diligently working to remove things that should be removed, to take out obsolete components. So JRuby is a Java implementation of Ruby. And some years ago, Kosuke had created an experiment that would allow developers to write Jenkins plugins in Ruby by relying on the JRuby runtime, so a Java implementation of Ruby, inside Jenkins core. So there was a JRuby plugin added to provide the runtime, and then plugins would layer on top of that and write their plugin code in Ruby instead of writing it in Java. Well, by choosing to do that, we ended up locked onto an outdated Ruby version, and that JRuby version could not run on Java 11. So no Java 11, and it created all sorts of problems for us as we were doing other improvements to Jenkins core. And so between the inflexibility, no Java 11 support, it was time for JRuby to go. And actually, Jenkins Enhancement Proposal 7, to tell you how early in the Jenkins Enhancement Proposal it was, Jenkins Enhancement Proposal 7 from Daniel Beck proposed to drop support for JRuby. And now we've implemented it, and JRuby is gone.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean to users? To most users, it doesn't mean anything. There are some users, and by some I mean on the order of 10,000 installations out of a total of 280,000 possible. So figure 1 in 30 may have one of these old plugins installed, and they'll need to uninstall them.
Okay. And hopefully they weren't using them.
Right. Well, even if they were, each of those plugins has been reviewed, and I'm confident that there's a viable replacement for pretty much every one of the plugins in the list.
Okay. What about this ASM5?
Yeah, so this is another investigation fun where ASM is a Java bytecode manipulation library. And what it does is it allows Jenkins to manipulate bytecode, to do operations on bytecode. ASM5, though, was forked and bundled inside of Jenkins core, along with later versions. And that's unhealthy, right? That's just plain and simply unhealthy. And The ASM5 version is gone. ASM5 has all sorts of interesting complications anyway. You need to get to newer ASM versions to get full support for Java 11, Java 17, etc. So we didn't want to be stuck with ASM5 long term anyway.
Okay.
Now, this is again a story of upgrade your plugins in order to be sure you have latest plugins to support these changes in Jenkins Core. If you upgrade Jenkins Core without upgrading your plugins, you may have plugins that fail because they may have dependencies on the old Guava. They might have dependencies on the old ASM5.
Okay. We'll come back to systemd. I want to hold on that still for a little bit longer. Because that one could take more time, and I don't want to. I want to get through at least the main part of the changes here. And again, we'll do a standalone, maybe even two, because I have a feeling we may end up doing a systemd for RPM and a systemd for dev.
And I think it's a worthwhile conversation because those two systems had very different configuration settings, and the different configuration settings mean different experiences for administrators as they upgrade.
Yeah, it's different experiences, but what's going to be great, because I've done both sides already, is that the end result on both an RPM based and a dev based ends up being the same.
Right, and that's what the unification aspect of systemd has been a positive and a real benefit in my experience with it. Yeah. All I have to do is a systemd command, and it's the same no matter which Linux variant I'm running.
Yep. Current Linux variant. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Okay, so where do you want to go next? We've talked about the Guava. We've talked about always enabling agent to controller.
I think we should talk about the prettier UI. Let's
prettier
talk about
UI. Okay.
the UI changes, because I am really impressed by how the UI has improved. So grateful to Jan Feracik, to Tim Jacome, to Alex Brandes, to Daniel Beck, to a number of others who've done great contributions to improve the UI this release.
Okay. Do we want to just show it?
I think we should. Let's just show it.
We'll do that. So what I have here first is this is a 2.3.19.3, so previous LTS, most recent LTS. And this one here is the 332.1.
Exactly.
Now, watch carefully. Old, I feel like an eye doctor. New. Old, new. Everything that's happening is sort of here in the middle. In fact, that's the only thing that I'm seeing change.
Right.
At least from a measurable perspective.
Yep.
So, what do you want to call out here, Mark?
Okay, so let's go back to the new one.
Okay.
So notice the nice rounded edges. Now, Darren, go ahead and hover over. You did it. Perfect.
Oh, sorry.
Hover over,
I didn't mean to.
That's ideal. Notice that the hover text has the nice rounded corners, softer edges, softer background. Now, if you, up on the top in the all thing, if you click that plus sign, we can add a view. And views now have a nice, give it a name, and let's call it, let's call it X. We're going to do the X view.
Okay.
And just make it a list view. That's perfect.
Okay. All right. And there we go. It didn't like the tab. Okay.
Yeah, so there's and we've had, I think we may have had a bug fix on tab navigation recently that may not be here yet.
Okay. All right. So now we're in the config.
And so here, just check the.
Wait.
Yes, there you go.
I'm used to seeing the big blue circles over here, but now they're right here.
Right. Click it. So the online help is now closer to the heading that it's describing. So it's much more clear now. What does that question mark associate with? No need to do the long scan across.
Correct. You don't have to long scan across, but fair warning, I have noticed that sometimes when the help does open, it doesn't open right beside. It's going to be in the journal area, which is no different than before. But just because it's here doesn't mean that everything pulled up with it.
And there's actually a bug report that Daniel Beck noted specifically on that. He found some even more interesting cases where it went into really surprising locations. So yes, you're correct. We're still working on being sure that the help goes in exactly the right place every time.
Yeah, because like if I click on this one, let's see what happens. This is what I would expect.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
I would expect that just to drop right underneath right where that was. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, it wouldn't have surprised me if it would have dropped in underneath the drop down. It wouldn't have surprised me, but this is preferable.
Right.
So, and it's there. Okay, so let's click on, and we'll talk about all the things.
Before you do the OK, we need something in this view. So go up to the top, check test in
Just
there
test.
so that we see the test job.
Got it.
And
Okay.
now do an OK.
All right.
So notice that the X at the top is highlighted. If you go, if you select all, it will switch back to the all view.
Okay.
I find the view layout much more pleasant, easier to read.
Okay. The other thing too is the play button.
Oh yes, right. So new icons.
New icons all over the place. Mm-hmm. You'll notice all these little things are rounded instead of just sort of hanging out, buried. Of course, what's my timing here? It appears to play a little bit nicer,
Right.
font size wise. The one thing that is a little different is now everything. The thing I liked about the older is this gray was a nice call out to me. But now it's like, okay, I have to find it, especially the way I'm staring at it. The way I'm looking at the screen that I'm looking at, I don't see the grays that are right here. I mean, I have to get right in line. I have to get like straight in line with it.
Right.
Because I'm looking
okay.
down on it, I can't see it. But that's me, not this.
Fair, and we may want in a future session to take a look at dark theme, because one of the niceties of this new work is that the people who've been developing and have been actively working to assure that dark works cleanly and well, so that you can freely switch. And in fact, we've got an upcoming change with a theme manager that's really quite elegant. So yeah.
Cool. What else do we need to look at here? Now, we've talked about hovering over this. We see the nice, pretty round edges. Mm-hmm. What was one of the other things I did?
So
let's just go into a configuration, right?
Okay, good.
So we'll just go to the configuration. This is just a pipeline job that's pretty ugly, if you will. None of this really changes.
Right.
This is all fairly normal from a pipeline perspective. But now if we take a look at the configuration, again, instead of the big blue question marks all being over here on the right-hand side, now they're bumped right up against here.
Right.
In fact, let's A/B this since we're here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go to configure. So there's that one, and we'll go there. Okay, here, let's get them to match. Okay, so there's, now one thing I noticed too is that it seems to be a little bit narrower.
Yeah, and it is slightly narrower. There was there was some issues in terms of excessive narrowing in earlier versions before we got to 3.3.2 that were only visible in weekly, and so yes, there is a slight difference there.
Okay, if we were to let me sort of scroll down to match here, this is all pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. The pipeline block is exactly the same, other than the question mark.
Right.
I mean, just some. Well, and the other thing too is the bolding. That's one other thing that I noticed too, is like script here is not bold, but if we look over here, it is bold.
Ah, yeah, and that may be something we want to work on to fix. I'm not sure that that's as intentional. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good question.
Yeah, and I can't tell from definition just because of my angle if these two match or not. This doesn't look to be as heavy as this, but both of those are still, actually definition is the same on both.
Ah, okay, yeah.
So it just appears that script is.
Yeah, and that may have
reason.
been an intentional choice. They may have said, "Hey, let's make it look like the text above it."
Yeah, and that's fine.
So now, while you're here, we got to have a little bit of fun while you're here. So edit this pipeline, and replace that error step with a sleep 60.
Okay. Whoops.
Save it.
Work. Wait, that will work. Yeah,
should work, I think.
Yeah. Sleep will work. Yeah.
Now build it. Okay, so now once the build starts, open up the console output.
Ah.
And I like this. I like that animation. Okay, I admit it. It's just a nice little CSS animation telling me, hey, this thing is still running. Now go back to eye candy. It is eye candy, but I just really like the eye candy.
Okay. All right. What else do you want to look for? Actually, I guess I could stop.
So I wanted to also take us into some of the administrator improvements. So we've talked about the really high visibility stuff. Users will see those things immediately. Not every user manages or administers a Jenkins installation, but there are a number of improvements in the managed side. So let's take the most visible one first, manage plugins.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay, so that's old.
Right.
That's old.
So here's the old one. Now go to the new one.
There's new.
Right. So first highlight uses the new style with a lighter background. Now notice already here we see a significant difference in how it's laid out. So go back to the earlier version and let's talk about the differences here in the Available tab. Notice that here there are 4 columns.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
And we're giving up space and readability of the description in order to dedicate a column to version number and a long description of the release date. Now switch back over to the new one. Okay, we're focused here on, released we're going to tell you so that you have an idea of the age, but we're going to put the version number right next to the plugin and include the text right there.
Right.
Now that theme will continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand too. I can't remember, is this being truncated?
That one is not. That's full. That's full.
That
text.
is full. I couldn't remember with the trailing underscore if that was showing a truncation or not.
No, what that's saying is Maven has some interesting rules about version number strings. If the letter A is followed by a digit, Maven interprets that to mean alpha. And we were having all sorts of surprises because Maven thought we had embedded alpha into these things. So the underscore is to avoid a little Maven problem.
Next. Moving on. Okay, so that's true for available, installed, and installed.
Installed has some new capabilities, and this is again a lot of fun to discuss why. All right, notice the enabled slider, very visible, very clear to hint to you, is this thing enabled or not?
Yep. To me, what's even better is the delete.
Yes.
The uninstall.
Uninstall is a very, very glaring hint. You're really going to get rid of this. Okay, first, we also fit on narrow screens now.
Right. Well, right now I'm zoomed in on 150% on both.
Right. So
it's sizing correctly for me, which is great. I love that.
Yeah. So the Jan and the team made it so it works on narrower screens, and you're not sacrificing information in order to, and you're certainly not scrolling left and right.
Let me see what happens here because I'm going to resize this. Just to see what happens live.
Yep.
Okay. Eventually, I do lose it.
Sure.
At some point, it's gone. But
Plugin
even
Manager
that
probably is going to have a little difficulty on your phone. Yeah. But on most devices, on my Chromebook, for instance, no issue. Works great.
Okay. So enable, disable, uninstall. Anything else on this one?
Yeah, there's one more that I have to highlight because...
wait.
Go ahead.
Here's one that I didn't catch until this moment.
Which
Report an issue with this plugin.
Click that link, Darren. Click that link. You've got to see this. I think this is...
All right, so if you can't see it, if you look in the far left-hand corner, you'll see that it says to Jenkins.io, participate, report issues, redirect, and then a hash with a number, which I can't tell. Are the numbers the same?
They are not the same.
Okay.
So that's the cool thing about this link.
All right, I'm going to open in a new tab explicitly because I don't know if it opens automatically in a new tab
and
or
I
not.
expect it would not open a new tab, so definitely open. Okay, so what that did is that puts you into a page that offers you 3 choices, and they are intentional choices. And it's specific to that plugin. You could report a bug, something that's broken, and when you press if you were to press the continue button, it would take you to report exactly that bug on that plugin.
For that plugin. Okay.
Exactly. So bug is nice. Improvement is nice. It'll correctly classify it. The really intensely valuable one for me here is this security one because it will put you into the correct security bug reporting mode. So you're not going to inadvertently disclose a security problem publicly.
Right.
So
And it's okay if you report something that you thought was a security that ended up not being a security problem.
Right. The security
That's
team
okay.
much prefers that over the
Yeah.
report a security vulnerability publicly and have everybody panic about it.
Yeah. I do want to bring up one of the things that Andreas says here. Nice changes to the plugin manager. It's just a pity that the filter resets when you switch tabs.
Yeah, and that's a good point. There
Yeah.
are still things to improve. Actually, go back to the plugin manager. One of the things that we've noticed from users as we've listened to them is the filter that you see at the top is not as large as it was before, and it's not as close to
Right.
the actual data as it was before. And because of that, users sometimes don't realize how important that filter is in this operation. So go to the available tab, Darren, and let's use that filter. No, available.
available.
Yeah. So in the available tab,
Yep.
several LTSs ago, it was improved so that instead of getting all 1,800 plugins, it gets a small set.
Right.
Then to find the one you want, you have to enter something into the search box.
Right.
There you go. Now, however, with that position in the top right like that, some users are mistaking that, they may not understand that's exactly filtering what they're applying here. So there's discussion right now as how do we make it more clear to users that they need to use this filter.
Yeah. I've run into that as well, just with a different variation. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that had completely, I had just not seen that at all. And that's super cool.
And that's part of the joy for me is I love that report and issue. It's something that Gavin Mogan pioneered on the plugin site, the plugins.jenkins.io, where there's a report and issue link there as well.
Yep.
And it's the same technique. Present the choice of 3, and it also knows if the plugin tracks its bugs with GitHub rather than with Jenkins Jira, it will take you to GitHub. So
Nice.
so I no longer have to think, where do I go to report
to
bugs
report?
for this plugin? Just click that link and it'll take me there.
Wow. Okay. Just for grins, let's just click on this and see where it goes. Okay, so
Sure.
I can see that it's going to take me to
Issues.jenkins.io.
Yeah, which I'm not logged in right now, which is
Right.
fine, but that's okay. All right. Okay, so we've looked at plugin manager.
Well,
What-
and
One
I
more thing you
think-
want to look at here?
We covered it. It was. I
Well-
wanted to be sure we talked. Oh yes. This
There
one
was
is
this one change.
This is the Mark Waite thing. I like this one. Alex Earl actually made the change in advanced, exactly that place. That updates or the upload a plugin
Yeah.
used to require that you enter a file, and it would
Right.
only take a file. In the new version, I can give a URL, and the cool thing about that is that URL, for instance, could be from the build artifacts that are created by ci.jenkins.io. Somebody submitted a pull request, and I want to evaluate that pull request. I paste the URL to the artifact from that build into this, and Jenkins will grab it from ci.jenkins.io, install it on my system, deploy it, and be ready to restart.
Does it use any file protocol or any type protocol that's valid?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure the only ones I've ever tried has been HTTPS.
Okay. I didn't know if it would handle file colon or not. So,
And haven't tried it. I don't know how it would do that because the file colon URL would be resolved in context of the controller, not in my context, right? It wouldn't be in the context of the web browser.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. All right. So that was the only major thing to advanced, I think.
Yeah,
was this
Advanced
new
got
field.
that added capability, right?
Okay. Where else do you want to look? Well, actually, let's go back to the notes here real quick because
Okay.
to make sure that we covered that one.
Right.
Improve visualization of the environment variables. Okay. This
Yeah,
is
I want to
system
show you.
information.
I want to show you a couple before we. Okay, let's
Before
go
we
to
get there?
environment variables. Let's do this one because it's an interesting side trip. So change your URL on the page. This is not accessible, or it's accessible by other means, but you just have to edit the URL. env-vars.html and hit enter. And this is the environment variables available to shell scripts. But notice what happened to the navigation at the top of your page.
What navigation?
Exactly. What navigation? You're now stuck. The only way to get back is to use your back key on your browser.
Yeah.
And the other is it was not no localizable, so we could only be presented in English language.
So now,
So now go to the new one, do the same
Okay.
thing.
all right. So it's env dash bars dot HTML.
.html, right.
Okay.
Notice that it kept your theming. The dashboard link is still there, and it can even be translated now into non-English language.
Very cool. Okay. And
Yeah.
typically, you would access this from where?
I think it's actually available from various job
Job configs.
outputs.
Yeah.
job configs, various job locations like that,
Okay.
where you click it and it takes you here. The problem was before it took you there and you couldn't get back.
Right. Okay. Got it. Oh, wait. Was that new?
Was what new? So
The groupings. Wait.
I think those have been there before, so let's double
Oh, they
check.
were. They were.
Yeah.
They were. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
But already there are some things on that we want to tour. I think there are other things here you want to see. So let's have some fun with those as well.
Okay. So I was just going to do configure system because that's
Okay.
normally a. Actually, no. Let's go to system information first.
Yeah, system information is one that I like a bunch.
Okay. So there's old,
Yep.
and here is new.
Yep. So new layout.
New layout.
And not much beyond that. Still sortable columns.
Yeah. Nothing huge.
Yep.
It just. And it was consistent before, right?
It
So
was.
I'm okay with consistent before. It's fine. It's just being consistent with the rest of the theming. Okay.
Right. Okay. So now let's go back to manage Jenkins and do some other looks like
Okay.
the about.
Okay. So old about
Right. Old about looks
is
like this.
the normal old about. Just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Well,
and,
and notice it's got three separate
Three sections.
sections in the
Yeah.
page, right? Dependencies. Then
then
it's
we
got
get to-
the which static resources and license information.
now we see this.
Right. So Jenkins version immediately visible, top left,
Mm-hmm.
and tabbed for the other components.
Right,
So
so-
click and click. Exactly.
Yep. Just in case you needed to see the other pieces.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Now most of us don't use the About Jenkins page, right? That's
No.
not an everyday trip that I'm going to make to that page.
And this is what it looks like in a normal. This is just a 1080p monitor, nothing fancy, and
Right.
now at a zero zoom. So that's what it would look like normally. But for streaming purposes, I zoom in. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the about. Is there anything
Right.
else that we need to see under manage?
I think the one
that
the
was
one
it,
that
right?
well the one I liked was log recorders.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
not sure that that's as interesting to people, but for me when I'm diagnosing, it matters deeply.
Okay,
So system log.
thank you.
Okay,
So
and
there's
just go to
that.
the same view in the new one.
Well, so that was the new one. This
Oh, that
is
was the new one, right.
Yeah, I got turned around. Okay, so there's the old one,
Yep.
and there's the new one.
Yeah, they're just consistent look.
Yep. Also, blue happy ball
Right.
instead of gray, but hey, whatever. And then it still looks very similar, but
Right.
you know, it's this really the functionality doesn't really change. You see the
Nope.
it's just what it is. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that was system log. Was that the last big one?
That's
that one?
it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, let's go back over to here. Let's see what we see. Okay, we didn't talk dark theme. I still think dark theme is too early to talk about from an LTS perspective.
Well, so for me, dark theme is going to be I think we should put the June LTS. Let's plan for a deep dive on dark theme because some of Tim Jacombe's work on the what do you call it? Theme manager plugin. He's done highlight or prototype visual of what the theme will look like when you pick it. And it's
Right.
really cool. So, but that won't be available until June.
Yep. So we talked about this is well actually we didn't talk about this one, but this is just a developer thing. Here's the ASM.
Right.
This is the JRuby one that we've already talked about.
Right.
CSS animation we saw
We did.
when we
That's
did
right.
the sleep. Artifact list readability in a dark theme. Not going to see that today.
Right.
We saw the visualization of environment variables, plugin manager by URL.
Yep.
Again, modernizing table design. This is going to be an ongoing thing, I think, for a while.
The June release will have
another
more.
big one.
Right,
Yes.
the June release, because there's been significant work on iconography and on images and making the images scalable vector graphics instead of PNGs so that people with ultra high-res monitors still get really beautiful icons. Yeah.
If you have a spare machine laying around, if it even has a gig of RAM in it, even less than that, and you want to track the Jenkins weeklies, don't put production workloads on it, please. But if you want to just see how these visualizations are changing and how that might actually change how you use Jenkins within your organization, within your team, I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, it's been a great experience for me.
Yeah.
It helps the Jenkins project. More people testing weekly, more people experiencing weekly is a good thing. And it alerts you to, oh, hey, this changed and this changed with enough time to raise an issue if it's something that's going to get in your way.
Absolutely. What's that? I've got mine running on a Raspberry Pi 3. That's
right.
Actually, for that one, no, that one's on a Raspberry Pi 4. I have a weekly running on a 4.
Mm-hmm.
I have an LTS running on a 3. Different conversation for a different day. Okay, and we went through these two. I think we've run around the pet store long enough. I think it's time to talk System D. The pet store reference was Pee-wee's Big Adventure, if you didn't understand that reference. If you've never watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure, go watch it. And towards the end, he's saving animals out of a pet store. That's what this is, what I was referring to. Okay. System D. Let me stop sharing here for just a second. I'm going to put us, I'm going to get zoomed back in over here. I need to stop sharing, and I'm going to go to a full screen here so we can see what's going on. Because what I have here, and unfortunately it's going to look a little weird. So I'm inside of what I'm inside of. I'm inside the 332.1.
Right,
control.
and this is a CentOS image, right? So you're running...
It is CentOS, yeah.
Okay.
I'm running CentOS 7.9. And let's take a look at the upgrade notes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you've not used System D before, and you've just been using the init packages, if you're on CentOS, you've been used to editing Etsy sysconfig, or if you've been on a Debian release, you've been in Etsy default Jenkins. And did I say it backwards on CentOS? CentOS was Etsy sysconfig Jenkins. You've been used to editing those files in some way, shape, or form. But now with System D, by the way, you don't have a choice.
That's correct.
You don't have a choice.
This is not, gee, if you'd like to keep using System 5 in it. No, this is really, we're going to bring you to System D.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. And this is the reason why I think why we have to do those separate streams.
Sure. Yeah.
Just because there was just enough, even though I've worked with System D enough, I haven't been a day-to-day operator.
Right.
724 operator, so I'm a little rusty on these
well,
parts.
and there are things, so previously we would stop and start the Jenkins services with system control commands because it was using a system control layer that talked to System 5.
Yeah,
but we've switched and gone full on now, and that means the configuration is no longer System 5 style configuration.
Correct. So in fact, just to make that true, let's see if because this is one thing I didn't check. So this is live coding. That is not big enough. Here, hang on a second. I am going to make this much bigger because if I can't see it,
yeah,
that's better.
I can read that text. Good.
Okay, good. Whoops. There. Okay, so just for grins, I haven't even checked to see if that file exists. Now this was a fresh install. Whoops. I could become root. I'm too lazy right now.
Fresh No, you're sure it's I thought you did an upgrade from something to something. No, this is brand new.
So I had a 319 installation and I have a 332 installation.
Okay.
So it appears that it is still shipping
file. Yeah.
This file with all the normal defaults. But if you were to take a look at how this is running. So if I do a system, here, I'll forget sudo, so I'm going to go ahead and become root just so I don't. Okay, so if I say system cuddle or CTL or system control, I don't know how you say it, but
Me neither.
for the rest of this video, it's system CTL or
Great.
system cuddle. It's going to be whatever I say. It's what it's going to be.
Perfect.
And if I take a look, and because I'm CentOS, I can do -L. That doesn't work on deb the same way,
Huh. Okay.
which is sort of weird. So what I can see here is that it loaded the service, etc systemd system Jenkins service.
Right.
Great.
Already a difference from the previous LTS. In the previous LTS, it would have said /etc/something different.
Here, hang on a second.
Okay.
Let me, can I do that? Yes, I can do that. What was this? This was 08. I'm really doing this live right now. That is not the right one. Yes, I've got this in Jenkins, or in Ansible.
Good.
Because I spin things up so much.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's weekly in LTS. I think this is 9. That's it. Okay, so if I go Vagrant, SSH, and where am I going? I'm going to Jenkins Alt. And I am going to have to zoom in for people here. Oh, this is going to be so sad. Okay. Pull that tab away. This is me having a hard day with iTerm.
Hey, I think you're doing amazing. I'm not an iTerm user, so I'm thoroughly impressed. I've not been able to do these kind of elegant things. This is nice.
Oh, it's not elegant. It's me clicking and dropping and doing the wrong thing. This has nothing to do with being elegant. Okay, so if I do a, let's do the same thing here. System cuddle
control
-L status.
status Jenkins, right.
Okay. So in this case, what I have, I know the top is super small, and I'm okay with that for the moment. Let's go here. So previously and for now, the loaded is the same.
Oh, so Debian is the only one that does it, because on Deb it
No, I
reports
lied.
differently.
I lied. So this is weird. So this is
etcrc.d, which
Correct.
is in fact System 5 style initialization.
which, right. So, but this is already there, and it's being shipped over to here, right? So it is different. Now, here, I'm going to get rid of this because I don't care about this right now.
Okay.
What I care about is here. So you'll notice that we have this service running, actually loaded, this service running, and it drops into here. And you notice that we have an override.
Right.
So if I was to go and take a look at this file, so if I say cat that file, I see this file. This is the service file.
Right.
Now you'll notice top line, do not edit this file manually.
Please believe that comment. Don't edit that file.
Now, you can edit the file. But when you do your apt upgrade, yum update,
DNF upgrade, whatever. Yep.
it's splatted. That's the reason why the override is there. Now, we'll look at this in just a moment. Here's the difference compared to previous times. Used to, we had an etc init Jenkins file. There were 4 files in the RPM. I'll go with the RPM because I know that one off the top of my head. There were 4 files in it. There was an etc init Jenkins file,
Right.
an etc sysconfig Jenkins,
Right.
and etc logrotate Jenkins, and the Jenkins war file, which was in userlib, blah, blah. I can't remember the exact path for that one. Yeah.
Right.
So those were the only files, and there was a post-install, a pre-install, and post-install scripts baked in the RPM. But it's from a file perspective, there were only 4 files in there. Now the files are different. Now we have this user bin Jenkins file. This is where I had to wrap my head around this. This is similar to the initd file from the past. Similar, but definitely not the same.
Right.
Some of the big differences, if you were using the sysconfig file and making modifications to it before, which was the right thing to do in the past,
Right.
from a System 5 perspective. The 2 that you used to modify were Jenkins Java Ops and Jenkins Args. That's no longer true. And how do I know that? Well, that takes us back to what we just saw from the output of this systemd file. From our perspective, I usually update, there's two things I always do. And by the way, we didn't even get into the whole Java 11 thing today.
Right.
But that's a thing too. We're still var lib Jenkins. We're still Jenkins user and group by default. All that stuff's good. Jenkins Java command in the init file, there were multiples, but now the default is this. Actually, if you were to take a look at the user bin, it goes through the same math, I believe, as before. I'm trying to find my setting that I normally do. But we'll probably just go there in just a moment. Prefixes is still the same, but a couple of things. Oh, this is the other thing too. If you're using if you're using Etsy limits, what was it? Etsy security limits.conf. Now you have to use it in here because systemd doesn't follow limits.
Right.
Small thing. But if you're expecting it to work, it won't. And I'm sorry this is taking me so long. I'm trying to find it, and I'm drawing a blank where it is. Okay. Oh, here it is, Java Ops. What used to be Jenkins Java Ops is now just Java Ops. And this goes back to something that we will show when we do those next videos. When you go through the upgrade, at least this was on Deb. I didn't go through this process in CentOS yet.
Okay.
But when you do that yum update, or in my case, apt update, and Jenkins upgraded, it's like, hey, there's changes here. What do you want me to do? Do you want to keep your changes? Do you want me to overwrite your changes? Do you want me to try to merge the changes? I'm assuming that's all the stuff that Basil was doing in handling that upgrade process.
It is, but because you were modifying a system file in that case,
correct.
That's where apt is guiding you, hey, I can't resolve the change, you need to get involved.
Yeah, so going back to the docs here for just a second. What we can do, and this tells you some information, but this is even a little short. I've already set up an override file. We saw that, and let's just go back here for a second. And I know we're rambling, but this is, until we can sit down and do a whole, like, soup to nuts video, at least I want you to understand the parts of this. There's this override file that exists, override.conf. And what's going to happen, if you'll notice how this is running here, I've got user bin Java, here's my headless, which was the default from Java Ops, and then I add in prefer IPv4 stack. I set a temp dir just because I don't trust temp on a machine, because I set some time zones, and then it gets into the normal stuff, so I don't do anything there. And then I also set a plugin root because I don't want my plugins extracted into my Jenkins home directory, just another conversation for another day. The way I got this to work was using the system control edit Jenkins, or system cuddle edit Jenkins. So let's just do that. So when I do this, this is my override.conf file. When this saves, in fact, I'll just save it. No, here, I'm gonna have to make a change to it. Let's see, I'm gonna say...
add an empty line.
Maybe. I don't know if that's going to work or not. No, it's smart enough. It doesn't show it that way. Regardless.
Oh, okay.
Actually, you can see it here. So you can sort of see, this is almost like a swap file that you would see in VI, or if you're editing cron tab. It's that same type process here. So I am overriding the environment variable for Java Ops. I'm also overriding the environment variable for Jenkins Ops, which used to be Jenkins args in the past, because that was at the bottom of the file for sysconfig. And then I was testing out my limits changes. There's a blog post, not a blog post, a knowledge base article over on CloudBees called Preparing Jenkins for Support. And these values are from that document. And I'm just testing, okay, is everything working the way I expect it to? But now you might be asking yourself, okay, Darren, that's great. Oh, by the way, notice the service block. That's important. You leave out the service block, it's not just an override file, even though it's named override, it is an override file.
Right.
But if you forget to tell it what these values are meant to go to, it's going to say, I don't know what section this needs to go to.
Exactly.
I don't know.
You must comply with this. Well, and these things are declarative, and therefore don't assume shell expansion rules, for example. Don't assume this is, you really got to give real values here.
Yep. Now, there is another way to figure out, okay, remember we just looked at, I did the cat for that systemd file, and it was big, long, and ugly, and I scrolled through it. If you were to do the same systemctl edit Jenkins, but then do a -- full, then what that does is that pulls in that file completely. Now, I haven't tested this, and I don't want to break it for right now, but in theory, what's going to happen is it would just write this out into my override file, and I would have everything there, right? It'd be basically making just a copy, write it, and then it would just be using what was here and not the things that I just set up separately. But this could be the starting point for you. It's like, oh, okay, all those are good, so I'd say, okay, I don't care about any of these, right? Just no, doesn't matter. Whoops, undo. I'm good with all these. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I'd say, okay, delete all those. But then I start getting into, okay, I actually don't want to run as Jenkins. I want to run as another service account that we have on this machine.
Right.
Right. So I could go through and work this out. So this is going to be up to you to figure out. And there's also some weird, this is one thing I still scratch my head on. I do want to show us one other thing too. This %C.
Right. That is systemd providing
systemd.
some replacement stuff. Yep.
Right. And also this %L. Now notice Jenkins web root that's var cache. In this case for CentOS, var cache Jenkins war. But notice that's uncommented. Now remember, this is the default.
Right.
Notice Jenkins log. Notice that it's commented out. If you've been used to going and looking for your logs in var log Jenkins, it's not there anymore.
Right. You use journal control now to get access to the logs by default.
Correct. So I'm going to save out of this. So if I do journal control -u Jenkins.
Right. There's the log.
There's my log.
Mm-hmm.
And that, my friends, is probably going to be the most confusing thing of this. And this is the reason why we're going to have to spend some time going through, okay, what has changed or what do you want to do? Because if you are expecting that log to be in var log because you're scraping it, sending it off to an log aggregator somewhere else, the default's not going to work for you anymore.
Correct. And it's actually intentional because journal control has the ability to do log file management for the user and for the whole system. And by us using journal control for logs, we've now got the benefit that it will let me vacuum and so that I can dispose of all but a certain size of logs.
Right, which you could do with log rotate D before.
Right.
Right. It was there, but it was a separate. This is a separate process, but not separate, if you will. Log rotate was separate from System 5.
Exactly. Yep.
Whereas now systemd, everything is underneath that systemd umbrella.
It is.
I have about 8 or 10 other commands that I still haven't memorized yet that I've got written down that we will go through when we go through this process. One of the other things I do want to say is because of the Guava changes, we didn't say this out loud, because of the Guava changes, you are going to want to go through, and in fact I have a video coming out about this, not specifically about Guava, but upgrading from Java 8 to Java 11. Mm-hmm. And I go off to a link in the documentation over at jenkins.io. I can't remember exactly where it is, otherwise I'd pull it up. But it talks about doing a backup of your Jenkins home directory first. Right. Makes sense, right? Stop, back up, bring it back up. No changes. I've got a clean. I know I'm good from this point.
Yes.
And then upgrade all your plugins that are available for you to upgrade. Like, do a check now. It's like, okay, checked 2 seconds ago. Great. There's a list of things here for you to do. Go do that. Shut down, back up again. Make sure everything's good before you do that part. Again, I'm making some assumptions here.
Right.
Now, you may see in that Updates tab, you'll see big blocks. In fact, we saw that here. Let me go back here for just a second, because what you may see, if I can find, I have too many keyboards here. What you may see is like what we see here. at this point in time, there is a plugin here that this version of the plugin exists, but it's not being offered. Right? There's nothing you can do about this.
Right.
But that's okay.
If you made the mistake of forcing that install somehow, you will break things because it does not support your version of Jenkins. So Jenkins is telling you safely, here's a new version of the plugin, but it's not ready for you. It's not allowed to use on your Jenkins version.
Correct. So right now there's probably 8 or 10 plugins here, and I'm okay with that. What you want to do is you want to get this update tab to this state.
Right.
Right? You either want it empty or you want it yelling at you, sorry, you can't do anything with this.
Right.
That's okay. Then you do your backup, and then you would do your upgrade. Bring it back up. And the very first thing you do is come back over to Manage Plugins again.
That's right. And you update.
And then you update. Now, notice I didn't say anything about backup at that point, because at that point, it's either working or not working. You would go back to one of the previous 2 backups you've already just completed.
Right.
Because that one at that point, you're at the point of no return at that point. It just doesn't matter. I don't apologize for going off on this rant.
No.
Not at all, because this is important. And with this release, with the number of, sorry, you can't take this plugins that we just looked at. We know Guava came in on this one.
Yep.
When you do this upgrade, and especially if you haven't upgraded yet to Java 11, because more than likely, I'm not letting the cat out of the bag on this. I know it's being talked about, but there is a strong possibility that come the June LTS, you're not going to be able to run your controller with Java 8.
Yeah, my hunch
story.
is it'll probably be September, but there will be a coming Jenkins LTS where we will stop allowing use of Java 8. It's coming. It is just coming. Java 8 is not going to live forever. We've kept it alive a very long time for Jenkins, but many of the components that we use are now rolling versions that require Java 11 or newer. We're seeing the movement in the market that Java 11 is becoming even more a thing.
I think, okay, so maybe I was being a little aggressive. It could happen in June, more than likely September.
Right.
But definitely by end of year, unless something really bizarre happens.
I would be truly astonished if we weren't requiring Java 11 by end of year. Absolutely.
What would be the last LTS for this year?
So
December?
likely December, right? Yeah,
December.
September. So September's .1, October's .2, November's .3. Either December or we skip a little bit and start with a .1 in January, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So within 12 months. So here's the deal. If you're already running Jenkins within Docker using an image, or running inside of Kubernetes using an image, by default, if you say Jenkins LTS or whatever the right tag is, that's 11 already.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Right. We switched that back last year.
Yep. There is still a JDK tag available for that, but I imagine once that stops shipping, once the rug has been pulled on that, there won't be any more JDK8s published because, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
But if you're still running on bare metal, virtualized, whatever you want to call it, running the package, downloading the WAR file, even if you're not using package installation, maybe today you're just downloading the WAR file because you already have a nice bake. Maybe you've already rolled your own systemd over time. Right? You got tired of waiting. Whatever it is, right?
It happens.
At some point, because at the end of the day, if you were to rewind and listen to my rant about what lives inside the RPM, one of the files is a WAR file. At the end of the day, no matter how you run it, no matter what package you've run, it's a WAR file. Right? Period. So Java 11 is coming as a final. So if your normal upgrade cycle is once every 3 months, once every 6 months, once every year, I think regardless, if you're in those types of upgrade cycles, you need to get it on your backlog.
Get to Java 11.
Mid-backlog. Get to Java 11.
Get to Java 11 is the right answer.
Yeah, don't put it on your long tail of the backlog. It needs
Java
to be.
11.
Doesn't have to be hot. It doesn't have to be the next 3 sprints or anything, unless your sprints are 6 months apiece. But the joke, sort of. it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I've moved over all of my Jenkins servers to 11 and have had them there for quite a while. Now, if you are a CloudBees customer, for the release that came out yesterday, that's based on 332.1. Now with CloudBees, you can run it on Java 11.
Right.
This is the first release. Now I know I'm crossing the streams right now.
Perfect.
But we have people that watch both. So,
Exactly. And now the option is available to a CloudBees customer to install and use Java 11. And that's an important thing. So they should start their planning. How do I get to using Java 11 reasonably soon? Right?
Correct.
They want to make that transition because it's good for them.
For the same rant that I just made earlier.
Right.
Because when the next Jenkins LTS, whenever that next LTS is, that is Java 11 only, that will also apply to CloudBees.
Right.
And that window is much shorter because we've had 11 with Jenkins for
2 years now.
Is it right at 2 years? Okay. I was thinking it's 18
yeah,
months.
18 months at least. Yep.
Yeah. So this window for CloudBees is going to be a little bit shorter. So work with your CSM, work with support, whatever. Again, all this is going to be a thing coming out from CloudBees talking about if you're running the CloudBees CI in whichever flavor, whether it's traditional, whether it's modern. Well, actually, if it's modern, the images that shipped yesterday are 11
Already
anyway.
there. Right.
Right.
Already
Okay.
there.
That's what I thought. But you can still, the RPMs and all that other stuff is there. Now, if you are running CloudBees, sorry to stay on this for a moment. If you're already running CloudBees, all the systemd stuff that we just went through, CloudBees has had a systemd solution for a long time. Right? So the systemd stuff that happened in Jenkins just now does not apply to, because the packaging, CloudBees has been packaging with systemd
for a very long time.
About a year now, I think.
Right.
Close to a year. Okay. Any other rabbit holes that we need to go down today? We went a really long time for us today.
Yeah, thanks very much, Darren. No, I think,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to us having one or more sessions on systemd. It'll be fun.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested in that, where's the best place for them to go to maybe ask some questions about that? Is it community.jenkins.io? Would that be the right place?
Community.jenkins.io is a really good place for open questions. If they're looking for material to study, hey, what does systemd mean? There are some additional references links on the page on jenkins.io for managing systemd services. Down at the bottom of that page, there are 3 or 4 links to various places. There's a DigitalOcean tutorial that I found quite helpful.
Right. Those are right down here.
Exactly. The DigitalOcean tutorial, I found it really helpful. The systemd documentation from Fedora is quite good. And of course, if you really want to read it, read the reference documentation from Free Desktop. That is the definitive location.
Yep. What I will do, I probably won't get to it tonight. I might. I will make sure that these links are all down in the description of this video. If you're just jumping in the middle and watching this, you're going to want to rewind all the way to the front. You can fast forward through parts of it. You'll see it. But this systemd part, unlike a lot of things that have happened with Jenkins in the past, this is not optional.
Right.
When you do this upgrade, it's there. End of story. And you don't want to be caught off guard with that.
Right.
And is there a blog post? I know we did a blog post about system. Was there a blog post about systemd yet?
No, haven't done a blog post about it. We did the documentation changes for it.
Right.
We did updates of various things, but no separate blog post. This is just read the upgrade guide, read the man pages, read the documentation. Right. Now we may yet do a blog post because one of the things that has been detected, one of the things we learned from the tables to div transition was it's important that we tell users the kind of information they need to give us for a good bug report. And for the systemd transition, there are specific things that people can provide to us that will help us do a better job of investigating. We need to know more about their configuration than for a typical bug report.
Right. Because after having worked through 2 upgrades, it, how can I put this? It wasn't hard, but it wasn't trivial.
Well, and it certainly is not as easy as the change was from 303 to 319, right?
Correct.
303 to 319, I did a DNF upgrade or a YUM upgrade or an apt upgrade, done. And no thought process needed. Well, this really is changing how configuration is maintained. It does an awful lot of work to try to retain your old settings. But we had one user, for instance, report, oh, I did it, and then I had to be sure that I enabled the service. And there may be differences like that on various systems because, hey, Amazon Linux 2 is different actually than Red Hat 8, and is different than Debian and different than SUSE Linux. You know, it's each has their own variation, and we test a bunch of them. But the upgrade scenarios and the configuration scenarios can be radically different from one place to another.
Let me ask this one question, because some people might be asking, especially after we were talking about 8 and 11. I'm using Timirin for all the JDK stuff I'm doing right now. Timirin 11 JDK.
Right.
Timirin-11-JDK. That's the package name I'm using. You're using the same, right?
I am. And the Jenkins Docker images all intentionally use Eclipse Timirin as well.
Okay.
So it's one of the reasons there was we chose Timirin because it provides good ARM support, good AMD 64 support, and it provides support for System 390, so the Z series mainframes, and for PowerPC. So it gives us an interesting mix of platforms. So that's one of the ways that we've got users who can actually run a Docker image on their Raspberry Pi. Because of
the ARM
Eclipse
support.
Timirin. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they still don't have a Timirin distribution for the Pi itself.
Different conversation. Actually, I definitely run a Timirin version on one of my Pis, but I'm not sure if it's if I'm doing things. So there are Pi variants that work. Some of my older ones definitely don't.
Okay. That's not why we're here either.
No.
We could talk about Pi for a while.
Exactly.
If you could get them right now, that's the problem. You can't get them.
Alternate CPU architectures are fascinating. Aren't they interesting?
Speaking of which, did you see the new Macs that were announced this week?
I did not. They've got a different variant of ARM going on now, or something newer than M1?
Well, okay. It's still an M1, but it's a double M1. They tied them together. That's not why we're here either.
Yeah.
But you can get 128 gig of RAM, up to 128 gig of RAM. And cores, you name it, cores. And I'm just thinking here, boy, what a build agent that would be.
Yeah, you can guess that thing will go quick.
Yeah. I don't want to run a controller on it. Don't need a controller on it, but let me have that as an agent. I could do some stuff with that.
Wow.
Okay, let's call this a day. We will. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, you should. CloudBees TV. So click on the subscribe button underneath Mark, or depending on where you're at, it may not be there. But click on subscribe, and then click the bell, say notify all, or whatever the top dinner bell is on that. And then if you haven't subscribed, I have to find the right click. If you haven't subscribed to the Jenkins YouTube channel, you should do that, and that's right down here. Jenkins CICD over at YouTube. You get to see all of the post, how do you say this? All of the meetings get posted there.
Right.
After some potential cleanups every once in a while.
Right.
So the governance meeting, which I believe was yesterday.
Just yesterday, governance meeting. Docs office hours that happen twice a week. Platform SIG, all those things. Yep, lots of discussions.
But we're going to do these two as far as doing the CentOS or RPM and Deb stuff. We'll do that here on CloudBees.
Right.
But if you go ahead and subscribe now to the CloudBees TV channel, then you should get a notification at least through the bell. And those will be scheduled probably about 24 to 48 hours in advance. I won't do them too far. And it's show up. If you don't want to show up live, that's great, because you'll know when it's there. It's recorded live, right? Yeah. I won't edit those at all. So you'll be able to go back and watch it at your convenience and hopefully understand what we did. Mm-hmm. because I have a feeling I'll be scratching my head, what am I doing?
We'll have some fun.
Your definition of fun and my definition of fun are probably a little bit different for that. Okay. Everybody, thanks for hanging out with us live. If you were live, if you watched the replay, Andreas, thanks. You're quite welcome. Mitya, we're out of here, man. Sorry. It's that time. Mitya. That's right, Mitya. Because I remember he taught us how to say it last time. Okay. So from an LTS perspective, we'll be back roughly in 4 weeks. There's no reason why that's going to change. I don't think we had any holidays to cause a bump.
Nope.
And I believe that's it. Follow Mark on YouTube. Not on YouTube. Twitter, Mark E. Waite. Do I have your banner?
I'm somewhere in
there.
there.
It is. Yeah, it's under my name, but just look over there. That's for Mark. That's not mine. Mine, I don't even have mine here. Just, it's there. Okay. Enough rambling. It's time to get to work. Start your planning. Use whatever ticketing system, however you create your backlogs. Start making these notes. I guess the short of it is, if you're used to just normally doing yum update, have a nice day, this is not going to be one of those days.
Right.
This one you need to plan for.
This needs some more thought. That's right.
I'm talking about System D. 8 to 11, 8 to 11, not as big of a deal.
Right.
Actually, it really isn't that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm trying to find all the right buttons to push. And let's just call it a day. It is Thursday. It's Friday, probably where some people are, so it's already Friday. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you again probably, I don't know when we're going to do it. It might be next week. It might be week after. It'll be before we do the next LTS. That I can guarantee.
I'd prefer it not be next week because I'm off next week. I know. I'm taking spring break and go play with my grandchildren. Sorry. That's how it happens.
Your spring break's next week, too?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you still have 3 feet of snow on the ground?
We do have snow on the ground. I just got some today. Happy March. It's springtime. We need the water desperately, so we'll take snow.
At least it'll melt for you. That's good.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and the weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.